Good evening, community. Although I know this topic is controversial and always divides people in some way, you know that I love stories about witches and episodes like this one that we're going to approach from two very different perspectives. A classic short story that almost seems like a fable and a longer one with macabre touches that can make it even more disturbing. I thank those who have shared them, those who have trusted us, and as I always remind you, if you're not afraid of witches, you can listen to this episode perhaps as mere entertainment. It may be up to you to take it seriously sooner than you think. It won't be the first time that a skeptic who laughs at certain topics ends up being the protagonist of nighttime stories. I want to share this story that my husband told me about his family. He is from the city of Reynosa, Tamaulipas, where he was born and raised with his parents, grandparents, and siblings. It all began when his father, my father-in-law, was still very young. He told us that his grandfather, my husband's great-grandfather, was a man very fond of gambling. He liked to spend nights in bars and cantinas, playing, drinking, and gambling until the wee hours of the morning, as was common in those days. He always carried a gun with him. It was also common to hear stories about witches, and everyone knew some trick to face them if it became necessary. On one of those nights, my father-in-law says, his grandfather was returning home after a particularly long day. Although he was somewhat drunk, his mind was alert, and looking up at the sky he saw a large owl flew overhead. He didn't feel anything strange at first. He had always liked animals, and they even said it was good luck to see them, but something changed when he noticed that there was something different about this bird. It didn't fly away, it flew differently and seemed to be following him. That's when he heard a lament. The sound was low, almost a whisper, but unmistakable. It came from the direction of the owl, which now seemed to be circling above him. The man felt a shiver, and remembering what his parents had taught him to do, he took a rope he got, began to tie knots, and recited the 12 truths of the world. Then he untied the knots, praying backwards as he had been taught for cases like that which occurred. It occurred. Then I will mark it always. Yes, the pre. The owl, Casulo suelo, but Quahizo he did, it was different. Muito. What fell from the sky, woman? Surrendered, he took out his gun, aimed, fired. The woman, seeing him in danger, begged him to do something. She told him she knew what he liked and that she could help him win in. While you're with me, always remember that I'm an animal. I'm going to get close to you from time to time, and you're not going to be afraid. The grandfather accepted, and as soon as he got home, he forgot about the matter. Although from that moment on his luck changed in an incredible, noticeable way, he won every bet he made and never had economic problems again. Everything he got at the gaming tables he would go and exchange for gold and bury it in his land where they said it was safe, very safe, but over time, strange things began to be noticed in the place. My father-in-law says that his grandfather would go out to the patio at night, light a bonfire, surround the fire with stones, and sit down to talk with someone that no one else could see. His wife said that he assured her that those friends always accompanied him, although for her there was no one there. He was always alone. When he asked for dinner, everyone would argue. They would serve him more food than he needed, and it was on those nights that everything changed while my father-in-law was inside the house. From the house he heard him arguing and then a gunshot in the patio. He didn't think much of it. It was strange, and he thought that maybe he had hunted an animal. Shortly after, her husband came in with a rabbit in his hands and said to her, "Look, old woman, it's for you to have it cooked." The woman always asked no questions and received the rabbit. The meat, the skin, the dressing, the overnight stay did not seem right. From then on, that grandfather's luck disappeared with time. The family came to the conclusion that that rabbit was not a simple animal, but the witch who had helped him for years, a witch that he himself had killed unintentionally. Perhaps since then the family never talked much about the subject, but the feeling that there are pacts that should never be broken always lingered in the air. The grandfather's luck never recovered. Now, community, let's go to a slightly longer story that will leave you thinking. Before you hear this story, I must warn you something. These are not common stories. What you are about to hear are fragments of my life, moments that still make my skin remember. These experiences are not for entertainment, but encounters with the unexplained, with something that lurks in the shadows and has no mercy. Since I was little, I discovered a sensitivity that connects me to the unknown, a kind of alarm that is activated when something evil is near. I didn't ask for this ability, but I inherited it. And over the years, it has been both a curse and a warning. I'm going to tell you about the times I've faced something that many call witches. Not those fairy tale witches with cauldrons, but something darker, older, more terrifying. Even more. One, in my childhood home, seemed to want to take the life of an innocent being that had been born. Another, in a mountain place, appeared with a similar opposite, chasing. I knew. That one didn't know. Those stories aren't meant to be shared, they're meant to be relived to bring back memories. And that twinge in my rib that always warns me when something is wrong. But I share them because I think it's important that others know, that others are alert, because evil exists and sometimes it's much closer than we think. Now be ready, I ask you to listen carefully. Do it. At your own risk, there are things you can't forget once you know them. Ever since I can remember, I've had this thing I'm talking about, this gift, although sometimes I think it's completely a curse. It's an ability that runs in the family. My dad had it too. In him, it's a tingling at the nape of his neck like a shiver that warns him when something bad is near. In me, it's a burning in my right rib, as if something were warning me to flee. I'd flee, but as a child I understood. I didn't know I had it until that night at my grandmother's house, and it's that this huge house with a patio full of angels during the day was a refuge, but that place changed at night. At night, the trees cast strange shadows. At night, the wind sounded like something was whispering among the branches. The hallway that connected the rooms had walls and windows. These gave directly onto the patio, and once the sun went down, that hallway was plunged into darkness, and to cross it you had to summon courage at night. That night, I wanted to sleep in my aunt's room. She was pregnant and my grandmother would bother her, but my aunt insisted on the problem. Bia, my younger cousin who always followed me everywhere, also wanted to stay with me. He slept on a mattress on the floor while I shared the bed with my aunt. At midnight my cousin woke me up. He wanted to go to the bathroom but was afraid to cross the dark hallway alone. I tried to ignore him, to let him go alone, but his pleas almost woke my aunt, and although I was also scared, I agreed to accompany him. We went out carefully, closing the door behind us so that the cold air wouldn't enter the room. We walked in silence. The only light was that of the moon barely filtering through the branches. My cousin went into the bathroom and I stayed waiting outside looking towards the patio, and that's when I saw it. There was a figure in the wall that separated. Our house on Vialta land was tall, much taller than a normal person could be because the wall measured 1 m. The figure was that of a woman but not human, a thin skeletal woman with long black hair that covered her face. Her arms hung down, and her fingers were long and sharp like claws. Although I couldn't see her eyes, I felt she was looking. My chest told me so, and the burning in my right rib was so intense that I almost fainted. She made me fall. My cousin ran to the bathroom and froze. He froze, took my hand and started to cry while stammering. He began to pray the Our Father. I would pray too, but I closed my eyes and asked that nothing would happen to us. I felt as if all the sound around us had ceased. No crickets, no wind, no creaking, nothing. Only silence and the certainty that that presence was watching us. When I opened my eyes, I noticed something terrifying. Her large, bright eyes were now peeking out from between mine. They weren't human. There was too much darkness in them. Yes, they were empty, but they shone like those of a predator on the prowl. And she moved, her head moved towards us, as if analyzing us like a predator choosing its prey. My cousin squeezed my hand so hard I thought he was going to hurt me, and I started to feel something strange. It was as if an invisible force was trying to separate us, as if something was pulling at our hands. My heart was about to explode when a warm light illuminated the patio. It was the lamp from the living room. My uncle had arrived. We ran to him without saying a word. He hugged us, confused, but when we told him what we had seen, his expression changed. He looked at us very seriously and asked, "Did you see her?" "See her?" My cousin started crying again, and I could only feel my uncle, in a tone I will never forget, telling us what was happening and telling us that for weeks that thing had been appearing on the patio wall, and some nights my aunt would wake up terrified because she felt invisible hands squeezing her belly. He confessed that he believed that creature wanted the baby my aunt was expecting. That's why he was looking for a dog